Hey there, Mama. I'm Courtney Cecil, proud mom of two boys and an organizational culture and behavior change executive. And I'm a believer in building a movement to help the burned out, overwhelmed working moms reclaim their control and free time so that they can confidently remain in the workforce without losing their sanity or themselves. Now, let's get started. Hey there, real quick before we dive in. If you're a working mom who's constantly asking, how am I supposed to get it all done? Or you think most days something has to give, then stop what you're doing right now and add this to your calendar. So on October 20th, I'm hosting a live training called From Surviving to Thriving as a Working Mom. And inside, I'm breaking down the 3 exact shifts that I made that helped me finally stop feeling like I'm behind all the time. Actually in a place where I can enjoy putting my kids down to bed at night, even after long work days, and most especially still have time and energy left in the tank for me, for self-care without guilt. So this isn't fluff. It is the real life system that helped me go from burned out consultant and mom of 2 to running my house like an absolute boss in my career with more ease, clarity, and time freedom. It's happening on October 20th from 12 to 1:30 Eastern. So get that in your calendar. It's totally free. It's virtual and it will absolutely change the way you manage your time forever. I promise you. So even if you can't attend, if you were listening to this and you're saying, gosh, that sounds really great, and it's either on a day that you cannot attend, or if you're listening to it later and it's already passed, I still would love for you to register so that way you can get notified as soon as the next one happens. So pause the episode right now and go register at workingmomsmovement.com/live-training, or you can get the link in the show notes, but make sure you do it now before the day runs away from you. Okay, now let's tune in. Hey y'all, I'm your host, Courtney Cecil, and welcome back to another episode of the Life Management System. First, I just want to thank you so much for all the love that you gave me after airing my 50th episode. So I'm recording this the week that went live, and I just have to appreciate all of you that have showed up for me and been able to say thank you. The ones of you that said, you know what, hearing your story made a difference. It felt really uncomfortable for me to be able to, kind of bear it all in the way that I did. I am a transparent person. I'm very authentically me, but that was personal. It was public and it was permanent because I can't take those words back. So being able to hear from so many of you that it made a difference really, really matters. But the other thing that I appreciated was how much someone needed to hear. A lot of people apparently just needed to hear, I can relate to this. This feels relatable. You feel relatable. Because in my head, I'm thinking, why the heck would anybody want to hear my story when they're here and they're tuning in to be able to learn how to make a difference in their life? So it also just helped me validate a little bit about what it is that y'all want to hear. And I would just like to reiterate that if you want to hear something, whether it be about my story or my take on what's going on in the world because of my past positions in culture or in change management or behavior change or, like coaching, I'm happy to do that. If you want to hear a specific topic, then by all means, let me know, because that's the only way that I'm actually going to be able to do that. I read every email that comes on. So hit me up at Courtney@workingmomsmovement.com. If there's something specific you want to dig into, I would be delighted to do that. So what I'm going to do in this episode is actually pull from some of that work history that I talked about in episode 50. So specifically, my work history around leading culture transformations at scale, like big time, in addition to my role leading culture at a Fortune 50, and most especially the role that I took designing and leading the strategy behind the future of work at my old firm. So if you're new here, I spent 16 years in the professional services industry. I started out as a traditional consultant externally, but then moved more or less into a consulting role internally for my company. And there was a lot of experience that came when I was doing that consulting work internally, because not only did I get to do the design and strategy, I got to see what actually happened during the execution. And as a consultant, that's a rare gift because normally you're there for one part of the project, not the whole thing. So I've been very hesitant to talk about some of my work history and perspectives. And that's just out of respect to the fact that I've been working in corporate. I just left corporate a month ago and was very sensitive to making sure that my perception was not unintendedly inflated as representing the company or the thoughts of the organization and the leaders there. So I was very careful about only talking about things that were more about me or the individual as opposed to organizations at large. And what I'm about to talk about is actually about organizations at large. It is about society as a whole and some of the hurdles that we still have to overcome in order to reach parity and balance in both caregiving and the workforce. So, for anybody that doesn't understand what somebody in the culture space does, there are a couple things. One, I'm the protector of retention. So by aligning the values of a person with the values of an organization, and helping bridge how people can live their highest and best use for the organization. It helps protect retention. When people feel cared for, when they feel heard and seen, when they know that they are in an organization that is fully aligned with who they are, they're more likely to stay. I'm also the protector of engagement. So what I mean by that is I help make sure that not only are they staying, but their heart's in it, that they're really giving it their all. So it is in the spirit of that that I deeply care about one of the articles that just was released by the Washington Post. You might have seen it. The headline was around working moms leaving the workforce and erasing pandemic gains. And it's not because they want to, it's because the systems that support them are just not working. And it's double clicking on that data and what's beneath that that I want to unpack today. Because what I want y'all to know, if you are in the place where you are either considering leaving or you are feeling that burnout that this article is alluding to, I want you to understand what type of decisions that you can make before you make that decision. So first, let me bring you up to speed by sharing the punchline of the story. So essentially, over the past 6 months, there's been nearly a 3 percentage point drop in the workforce of moms with young kids leaving. And to add to that, 212,000 people, women specifically, have stopped working or searching for jobs since January. Y'all, it is August when I'm recording this. That's not that long. 212,000 women in the workforce. So essentially, for every man that is entering the workforce, 4 women are leaving. And the reason they're leaving is because of the flexibility and mental burnout that they're feeling. That is the specific example that most of them are citing. The article though does, as they illuminate this, they do get a few things right. So first of all, I love that they were talking about how working moms essentially powered the post-pandemic comeback. But despite that, many feel forced between choosing their salary now and choosing their sanity, which is really unfortunate because most of them don't actually want to quit. They feel like they are quietly being pushed out. Let that sink in for a second. It's because things like the workplace flexibility or moreover the rigidness around that is conflicting and making it really challenging for them to take care of the caregiving responsibilities that, by the way, haven't changed since the pandemic. So if you think about life before the pandemic, we traveled a lot more. So there was downtime because you were actually physically in person with people in meetings. If you think about the transition time between meetings, like there was just breathing room in the system that doesn't exist now. But because so much is done over video now, the intensity in the workforce has certainly changed, but also the expectations of what kids are expected to deliver has also changed. So because they're asking to up level as parents, we're having to up level with them and make sure that they're meeting that demand. And it is all falling on the moms. Not all, sorry, that's an extreme statement. I don't like to talk in absolutes, but it is certainly hitting the return to office mandates are certainly hitting women, moms specifically, a lot harder. Because unfortunately, what's missing from the article is that focus on men. Where are the dads? Where are the dads? I will say that my husband is incredibly present and very helpful around the house. But even with the most helpful men, there's still often an imbalance. And what's shocking about the article is nobody's stopping to ask and call a timeout and being like, hey, why aren't both parents stepping back? Why is it just the women that are leaving? But what they're not saying is that that is often because the invisible labor tends to be carried by women. The mental load tends to be carried by women. Women tend to be the default parent. If you like zoom out even more, the societal pressures and historical norms and biases that are being superimposed from what's happened in the past all point to women being the caretakers. If you think about a lot of the political speak lately, it's been focused on the role of the women as the caretaker. And then furthermore, you're laying in all of these breaking systems. So we used to have a lot more DE&I policies and flexible work policies that helped support parents, but now we're collapsing those as well. So it is just leaving a lot for women to shoulder. And the return to work or return to office, if you are familiar with RTO, the return to office policies are that much more suffocating for caregivers and really handicap their abilities to be able to manage it all. So here's my read, right, wrong, or indifferent. I know I'm going to stir the pot a little bit here because some of the people I'm incredibly close with have very strong opinions about the return to office policies and whether or not it is or is not good for us. So here's my read as a working parent, as somebody who's led culture, as someone who has designed future of work. So if that's a new terminology for you, essentially the future of work is the way that an organization addresses the changing workplace and workspace environment based on increased enhancements in our technology and the changing world and conditions and society and that sort of thing. So I spent a lot of time in that space, studying that space, geeking out on that space, whereas a lot of people with strong opinions do not. They just are projecting based on their own individual experiences, which is not wrong because that's how we learn. But all that to say, I'm an actual study in this type of work. So here is my read. Um, Essentially, I think the pendulum swung too far in the pandemic. We went to a place where we overpronated significantly around be working from home. And of course, we had to at that time. Things were very different. But now the pendulum has swung way too much in the opposite direction. So all of those policies that used to just set where you used to be able to negotiate more flexibility. Now organizations are having hard and fast rules and policies, and moreover, actually policing people in the time they spend in the office. And that policing, as a person in culture, is just telling me, I don't trust you as an employee. And I believe that you owe me more as an employer than I own you. This is not a two-way relationship because I don't trust you. And a lot of the thinking behind that comes from a leader's bias, which is, hey, this is the way I did it. And the way I did it is superior. It's not accounting for the fact that the world is different. Like when many of our big organizations leaders were either caregivers themselves or were in lower level ranks, they were probably traveling, so they were getting a ton of downtime in between. They certainly were walking from one meeting to the next instead of going from back to back to back to back to back Zoom calls. The slower pace of life probably existed for their kids. Oh, and by the way, most of them probably were not in dual income families. They had somebody, probably a woman, at home taking care of their kids. Or a lot of them have never actually had kids. Some of them have never even gotten married. The point being, like, many of our leaders have come from a very different space, and it is their perception that because they were successful, that that is the way you do it. But what it's not accounting for is how much the pace of the world has dramatically increased, and the fact that we have capabilities now that we never had before. It's almost like we're ignoring those capabilities. So I believe that balance matters. But I also believe that we are processing this notion that return to office, like strong return to office policies, are the only way to create a strong culture. But here's the thing about strict RTO policies: they can be counterproductive to collaborating and building culture. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't go back at all. I do believe that younger employees need mentorship. And part of the way that they learn and grow is through observation. But guess what? The middle age of the workforce needs flexibility. Both of those things are true and both of them can exist. There is such thing as balance. So when we superimpose these really strict return to office policies that are policed, I believe that's counterproductive to both culture and the collaboration. So, as an example, if you think about the latest conference calls you've had, particularly for companies that have people in different geographic locations or offices, which is most larger, mid to large organizations now, even larger small businesses coexist in different geographies. If you think about those meetings, you are probably taking them on video with the people in the room, with other people on video in different places. But that automatically creates a proximity bias because you are building a stronger culture with the people there. Whereas if you have everybody on video in their own space, then that is all of a sudden neutralizing any proximity bias that could be introduced. And I'm a firm believer that propinquity, so if you're not familiar with that term, propinquity is essentially the implication of building emotional connection. And I believe that propinquity doesn't necessarily need physical proximity in order to create it. That strong connection can be created with very intentional curation. And it often is not, because that's the hard work. So as organizations, we are taking the lazy way by introducing an RTO policy and policing it, because culture can be built in different ways. So this is actually a direct reflection of how caregiving is still gendered, very much so, by perception and execution in the workplace. So in dual income families, it unfortunately still tends to be moms that take on that default parent role, or that take on the most flexible career role in the interest of supporting the family. And sometimes I want to acknowledge that that's driven by choice. A lot of the clients I work with say, I want to be a more present mom, or they experience mom guilt if they don't have that flexibility and they can't be there to support. But I'd also just like to acknowledge that while some of it's by choice, there's also a lot of legacy bias that society is superimposing. But moms also tend to be the one that are carrying the default load for childcare and school logistics and sick days and household tasks. So guess what? Anytime there's a problem, mom gets called. And then what does the workplace do? They essentially penalize the mom, whether it be losing out on promotions or the stigma that is associated with the flexibility that they're exercising, disproportionately falling on women than men. You think about things like maternity leave, the caregiving conflicts, like all of that it continues to mount up and is just a red letter on women as a whole, which further pressures them to want to leave or feel like the only option is to leave. But again, this article isn't claiming that dads aren't impacted. It is essentially just saying the data skews heavily towards women because they're the ones that tend to take on the brunt of the outcome when something's not working at home. But bottom line, this article is essentially implying that it's not about individual choice to want to leave. It is about the sheer absence of systemic support needed to support caregivers. So what does this mean for you? First of all, it doesn't mean you're crazy or you're lazy. Let me start there. It just means you're carrying a lot. And that a lot is probably the result of the lack of systems for sure, but also the chronic misalignment that happens when you're asked to do more than you're receiving. And that's really unfortunate because it means we're caring a lot. But you can also make a difference by helping kind of shift this tide on behalf of all of those behind us. So if you lead people, please lead loudly. I feel very passionate about that. Oftentimes, if you're not familiar with the terminology, by the way, um, leaving loudly essentially says you're making it known when you are doing something for yourself or for your kids or anything that is not related to work. And oftentimes we tend to do that with the big stuff. So we do things like, "Hey, sorry, I can't make that call. My child has a holiday play." But you know what we don't do? We don't ever share when we're leaving for the small stuff. We don't say, "Hey, I just want to go have lunch with my kid today. I'm out of here. I'll log on later." Or we don't say, "Hey, I just need a minute. It's been a week and I will make myself available to you after this time, but right now I need to go for a walk." And it's all the more important that we encourage our male partners to do the same or our male colleagues to do the same. And by the way, this doesn't matter if they're a caregiver or not. People that aren't caregivers deserve time away just as much as parents do, or people that are caring for ailing and aging parents. But the bottom line is, like, if you think about all the hours that you are spending a day on your kids, you'd probably calculate between 3 to 5 hours. For me, it's normally about 5 hours. That's a lot of time, 5 hours a day that we used to be able to devote to work or to ourselves that we're no longer able to do. So I think that us setting an example as leaders with or without kids that we're taking care of is really important. And if you, by the way, are connected with anybody in talent management or DE&I or benefits or learning or well-being, or if you know or participate in an ERG or like somebody that's in a leadership role there, particularly ones around like caregiving, women, and mental health, let me know, hook me up, introduce me, because I speak and I host workshops and I lead cohorts for new parents and those entry level execs to help teach the skills on how to balance it all. So I can help provide some of that support from the inside of an organization while society catches up. I also don't want you to feel like you have to quit your job in order to feel better. You don't have to wait for things to calm down, though. That's probably not going to happen, y'all. We are like decades away from that. You need a system for yourself that will offer you some of that support and some of the boundaries that you need that reflect what you most value in life. So, if you're contemplating leaving the workforce, particularly in light of a lot of the heat and the RTO changes and that sort of thing, first of all, I don't want you to feel guilt or shame for doing that. If that's what you need, then that's what you need. But I also just don't want you to think that you don't have options. And I want you to be confident when you make the decision that that's right for you before you leave all of that salary on the table. So, one of the things that I do in my coaching business is I help people work from right to left. So, what I mean by that is like, I help them think with the end in mind and back into that. So, when I think about the end in mind, it's like, okay, what do you want your retirement to look like? And then you back up from there. Okay, well, what do you want your life to look like after your kids leave the house? Okay, well, then back up from there. What do you want your relationship and your energy to look like when you're preparing your kids to leave the house? And so on and so forth. Like you keep having to pull that thread back and back and back. When you have that vision, it tells you what it is that you really value in life, what you are trying to create for yourself. And when you have clarity on that, it helps you know what you need to prioritize doing right now in order to create that. And when you have clarity on those priorities, that's when you know how to spend your time and your energy. So those resources, if you've heard me and tuned in before, you know I say this a lot. What you value influences what you prioritize, and what you prioritize influences how you spend your resources. Your resources being your time, your money, and your energy. So I truly coach people in how to design and curate that life. Like I would like to think of myself as a combination of a life coach and an executive coach and a time management coach and an organization coach all in one. And I help package that together for you so that way you are fully aligned with whatever it is that you value. Like a lot of my clients have actually been considering leaving the workforce or considering a job change. And then we start working on that value alignment because it helps them determine what it is they really want and need and helps bring some of that peace. And it doesn't mean that they won't choose to ultimately leave. It's that I want them to have absolute confidence that that was the right decision for them when they know what all of their different options are and the different things that could make their life easier before they jump to that conclusion. And then we help build systems around whatever that decision is that will help them manage it all without burning out, all tailored around their specific vision and their specific values. I have a friend too that might be of help if anybody is considering leaving. His name's Brian Page. He is the founder of an organization called Modern Husband, and he can help with some of that financial planning to help you make a more informed decision regarding the impact that it might make to you and your family and your future vision if you decide to leave. So I talked a lot. I'm not even sure if it was really with a purpose as much as it is. I feel very strongly about this topic because I've been on the inside. I've led this work. I have studied this work for years, 10 years. I've been studying this work. And I just feel like it's a darn shame that we have done so much to unwind the progress we have made. So it weighed heavily on my heart to be able to talk with you all about it and help give you some tactical ideas that will inspire you to either take a change within what you can control in your organization or consult an expert like Brian or me that can help you. So if you have not gotten my free guide on how to productively manage your to-do list and keep it from controlling or overwhelming you, that might be a great place to start. I'll include this in the show notes, but you can get it at workingmomsmovement.com/todo, TODO. And inside that, I talk about how to equalize the domestic responsibilities at home with your male partner. Nothing's ever going to be equal, but I'm hoping that it will give you some ideas of things and ways you can give stuff away to help lighten your load, because this shouldn't be a woman problem. This should not be a mom problem. This is a society problem. It is a parenting problem. It is a caregiver problem. And some of that starts at home and continuing to equalize the balance of domestic labor. So you can get that in your show notes if you haven't read it before. You can also consider outsourcing. It is one of my go-to strategies that saves me. I will link this in the show notes too, but I'm a big fan of Proxy by Peacock Parent. It is essentially a portal of vetted vendors and service providers that help you outsource and essentially buy back your time. So I will link that in the show notes. But in closing, first of all, thanks for tuning in. And I just want you to know that you don't have to disappear from the workforce to get relief. There are options, but the one thing I want you to do is actually stop disappearing from your own life. And I'm here to make that possible. So until next time, friends, if nobody's told you lately, you're doing a great job. You've got this, mama. Hey friend, thanks for tuning in. Add the Life Management System podcast to your favorites so you don't miss my practical, snack-sized tips to help you manage the mental load and create a life that works for you. If we're not yet connected on Instagram, come say hi at Working Moms Movement for daily inspiration. And if this is your 3rd or 10th time listening, it's time you bless the small business. Share this episode with another working mom in the thick of it and take 30 seconds to rate and review. It helps more than you know. And if you're ready to go from surviving to thriving and make your day-to-day actually sustainable, email me at Courtney@workingmomsmovement.com. Mention this podcast for 25% off my coaching services. I also speak and host workshops for organizations that want to support working parents from the inside out. Reach out if you think yours is ready. This has been the Life Management System, your shortcut to less chaos and more calm. And here's your reminder to keep managing your life instead of letting it manage you.